Remember Leave It to Beaver? It sold America the dream of perfect suburbia. But behind those bright black and white smiles was a far more complicated reality. The cast's journey from on-screen innocence to real-world heartbreak may shock you. Here's what they look like in 2026. Jerry Mathers as Theodore Beaver Cleaver. Theodore Beaver Cleaver, the mischievous, wide-eyed younger son in Leave It to Beaver, was played by Jerry Mathers. At 9 years old, he remained the emotional heart of the Cleaver family. Millions watched him grow, unaware that childhood fame would follow him for life. Born Gerald Patrick Mathers on June 2, 1948 in Sioux City, Iowa, he entered show business before kindergarten. By age 7, he had already appeared in Alfred Hitchcock's The Trouble with Harry, proving early that he could carry a camera's attention. Asthma forced him into home study during key years, even as production schedules demanded precision and stamina. His contract for Leave It to Beaver became historic. He was one of the first child actors to receive a percentage of merchandising revenue. His marriages unfolded under the long shadow of that childhood image. He married Diana Platt in 1974, but the relationship ended in divorce in 1981 as career transitions created instability. His second marriage to Rhonda Gehring brought 3 children, yet concluded in 1997 during another period of professional adjustment. On January 30th, 2011, he married Teresa Modnick, establishing a steadier chapter after years defined by reinvention through banking and real estate work. In 1996, doctors diagnosed him with type 2 diabetes, a turning point that forced immediate physical transformation. He lost over 40 pounds and later became a national spokesperson for diabetes awareness programs. During this period, he returned to television in Still the Beaver and the new Leave It to Beaver, capitalizing on the enduring syndication power of the original series, which continues generating global revenue in more than 80 countries. Today, Jerry Mathers is 78 years old and living in California. He remains active in nostalgia events and charitable work, particularly related to diabetes education and classic television preservation. His estimated net worth is approximately $3 million, sustained through royalties, real estate investments, and long-term financial planning. Tony Dow as Wally Cleaver. Wally Cleaver, the composed, dependable older brother in Leave It to Beaver, was portrayed by Tony Dow. At 12 years old, he was the teenage role model of the Cleaver household when the show began in 1957. Through 1963, he embodied the image of the ideal American son. Audiences admired his calm authority, unaware how fragile stability could be. Born Anthony Lee Dow on April 13, 1945, in Hollywood, California, he was the son of stuntwoman Muriel Montrose and contractor John Stevens Dow. A Junior Olympics diving champion before acting, he won the role through an open casting call. After the series ended, he appeared in programs such as Adam 12 and The Mod Squad, yet consistent leading roles faded. To survive financially in the 1970s, he worked in construction while studying filmmaking. He married Carol Marlowe in 1969, and they had one son before divorcing in 1980 during career uncertainty. That same year, he married Lauren Shulkind, who remained his partner for the rest of his life. During the 1980s, he reprised Wally in the new Leave It to Beaver and transitioned into directing, later helming episodes of Coach and supervising visual effects for Babylon 5. Mental health struggles surfaced publicly in the 1990s when he disclosed a battle with clinical depression. In 2021, he was hospitalized with pneumonia, and in May 2022, he was diagnosed with advanced liver cancer. Treatments weakened him rapidly. On July 27, 2022, he died at age 77 in Topanga, California, from complications of liver cancer, one day after an erroneous early death report shocked fans worldwide. At the time of his passing, Tony Dow's net worth was estimated at around $4 million, built from acting royalties, directing, sculpture exhibitions, including a showcase at the Carrousel du Louvre in Paris, and California property holdings. Barbara Billingsley as June Cleaver, June Cleaver, the pearl-wearing composed mother in Leave It to Beaver, was played by Barbara Billingsley. At 42 years old, she was the moral center of the Cleaver family and the image of domestic perfection on American television. She appeared in every season of the series, shaping one of the most recognizable mothers in TV history. Born Barbara Lillian Combs on December 22, 1915 in Los Angeles, California, she experienced her parents' divorce before the age of 4, forcing her mother into factory work to survive. She pursued modeling and Broadway before landing minor film roles in The Bad and the Beautiful and Invaders from Mars, years of near invisibility before recognition finally arrived. Just as her career seemed to stabilize, her second husband, director Roy Kelleno, died suddenly of a heart attack in 1956. Months later, she was handed the script that would transform her into television's ideal mother. Her marriages reflected both devotion and disruption. She first married restaurateur Glenn Billingsley in 1941 and had 2 sons before divorcing in 1947 amid professional and personal strain. After Kelleno's death, she married William S. Mortensen in 1959, remaining with him until his death in 1981. Behind the calm authority of June Cleaver stood a woman who endured widowhood, divorce, and the pressure of sustaining stability for her children. In later years, chronic illness altered her strength. She suffered from polymyalgia rheumatica, a painful inflammatory disease that weakened her muscles and limited mobility. Yet she stunned audiences in 1980 with her unexpected comedic turn in Airplane, speaking fluent jive and proving her talent extended far beyond maternal restraint. She later voiced Nanny on Muppet Babies, earning Daytime Emmy nominations, even as the original sitcom that defined her generated little long-term residual income due to restrictive 1950s contracts. Sadly, she died on October 16, 2010, at her home in Santa Monica, California, at age 94 from complications of polymyalgia rheumatica. She was interred at Woodlawn Memorial Cemetery in Santa Monica. Her estimated net worth at the time of her death was about $2 million, sustained largely through limited royalties and property. Hugh Beaumont as Ward Cleaver. Ward Cleaver, the firm yet thoughtful father in Leave It to Beaver, was portrayed by Hugh Beaumont. At 48 years old, he was the steady patriarch whose calm advice defined the Cleaver household. Throughout the series, he embodied authority balanced with compassion. Born Eugene Hugh Beaumont on February 16, 1910, in Lawrence, Kansas, he grew up in a family that moved often due to his father's traveling sales career. He studied theology and later earned a master's degree, blending religious conviction with artistic ambition. He appeared in film noir classics such as The Blue Dahlia and portrayed Detective Michael Shane in a series of crime films. His transition to television fatherhood solidified his fame, but it was not the entirety of his identity. He married actress Katherine Adams in 1941, and they had 3 children. Their marriage lasted more than 3 decades before ending in divorce in 1974, following years of professional shifts and personal strain. In 1959, tragedy struck when a car accident killed his mother-in-law and severely injured his son, an event that deeply affected him during the show's later seasons. After television success faded, he left Hollywood, turning to writing and later running a Christmas tree farm in Minnesota to provide stability. Health complications changed the course of his later life. A severe stroke in 1970 limited his physical strength and effectively ended his acting career by 1972. Though he continued writing scripts and short stories, his presence in the industry diminished sharply. While visiting his son in Munich, West Germany, he suffered a fatal heart attack on May 14, 1982. He was 73 years old. At the time of his death, his estimated net worth was approximately $1.5 million, derived from acting royalties, writing work, and farming income. His passing occurred far from Hollywood studios, yet his portrayal of Ward Cleaver remains ranked among television's greatest fathers. Ken Osmond as Eddie Haskell. Eddie Haskell, the slick, insincere troublemaker in Leave It to Beaver, was played by Ken Osmond. At 14 years old, he was the manipulative best friend of Wally Cleaver, charming adults while mocking them behind their backs. His smirk and syrupy compliments turned him into television's most famous teenage hypocrite. Born Kenneth Charles Osmond on June 7, 1943, in Glendale, California, he was pushed into auditions by a determined stage mother who believed Hollywood was the family's escape. He worked in commercials before age 5 and later appeared in programs like Lassie and The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet. After Leave It to Beaver, he struggled to escape the Eddie Haskell image, landing only scattered roles in shows such as Petticoat Junction and low-budget films. In 1969, he married Sandra Purdy, and together they raised 2 sons, Eric and Christian. That same period forced him to abandon acting as a primary income source. He joined the Los Angeles Police Department in 1970, trading studio lights for patrol duty. His marriage endured the shock of his dangerous profession, including the night in 1980 when he was shot 3 times during a foot chase. 2 bullets were stopped by his vest, and 1 deflected off his belt buckle, a detail that sounded almost cinematic but nearly ended his life. Years later, chronic illness became unavoidable. He developed chronic obstructive pulmonary disease and peripheral artery disease, conditions that steadily weakened him. After winning a legal battle in 1988 for a lifetime disability pension, he retired from police work and returned briefly to acting in the new Leave It to Beaver. In 2014, he published Eddie, the life and times of America's preeminent bad boy, confronting the role that had defined and limited him. Sadly, he died on May 18, 2020, at his Los Angeles home at age 76 from complications related to COPD and peripheral artery disease. His estimated net worth was about $1.5 million, drawn from police pension benefits, acting royalties, and property investments. Rusty Stevens as Larry Mondello. Larry Mondello, the awkward, loyal classmate of Beaver Cleaver in Leave It to Beaver, was portrayed by Rusty Stevens. At 9 years old, he was Beaver's closest childhood companion, often stumbling into mischief with innocent confusion. Yet his disappearance from the series shocked viewers who never learned the full story. Born Robert Rusty Stevens on November 25, 1948 in Boston, Massachusetts, he entered acting as a child and appeared in productions such as The Rifleman and Shirley Temple's Storybook. Reports later suggested his departure from the show followed tension caused by an overbearing stage mother, while others claimed the family relocated. Whatever the cause, his Hollywood momentum stalled abruptly. He married Teresa Marinelli and built a quiet family life far from cameras. After leaving Hollywood, he served in the U.S. Army beginning in 1969, stationed in West Germany during the Vietnam era. Returning to civilian life, he worked ordinary jobs, including selling car insurance in New Jersey. Now, Rusty Stevens is 78 years old and living privately in Missouri, largely avoiding public appearances. His estimated net worth is around $500,000, primarily from limited royalties and past employment. Frank Bank as Clarence Lumpy Rutherford Clarence, Lumpy Rutherford, the big, easily led buddy of Wally in Leave It to Beaver, was played by Frank Bank. At 15 years old, he was the lumbering teenager who looked tough but folded fast under peer pressure. Fans laughed at Lumpy, not realizing that the role would later trap the actor in a life-changing corner. Born Frank Bank on April 12, 1942 in Los Angeles, California, he entered acting late compared with other child performers and carried the pressure of catching up. Outside Beaver, credits came in fragments, including appearances linked to classic TV like Father Knows Best, but nothing stuck the way Lumpy did. When he later returned in Still the Beaver and the Revival series, the applause came with the same label, as if the world refused to learn his real name. That frustration eventually pushed him away from Hollywood and into a completely different life. He married Marlene K. Blau in 1963, and the marriage ended quickly, the first fracture in a personal life still trying to find solid ground. In 1966, he married Jerry Lynn Handelman, and they had children before divorcing in 1982, after years shaped by work pressure and reinvention. He later married Rebecca Fink, who remained with him until his death, and by then his home was filled with 4 daughters and grandchildren. When acting stopped providing stability, he rebuilt from scratch. Beginning in 1973, he became a bond broker in Los Angeles, living a life where mistakes had real consequences and there were no second takes. He later told his side of the story in his autobiography, Call Me Lumpy, 1997, exposing how quickly childhood fame can sour into adulthood typecasting. In the end, the most shocking twist wasn't scandal. It was how completely he had to change careers just to survive. Frank Bank died of cancer on April 13, 2013, in Rancho Mirage, California, one day after his 71st birthday, turning what should have been a celebration into a sudden goodbye. He was interred at Hillside Memorial Park Cemetery in Culver City, California. His estimated net worth was about $3 million, largely built through decades in finance and long-tail royalties. Stephen Talbot as Gilbert Bates. Gilbert Bates, the sly, fast-talking friend who pulled Beaver toward trouble in Leave It to Beaver, was played by Stephen Talbot. At 10 years old, he was the new kid whose tall tales and schemes could derail an entire episode. That contrast made Gilbert unforgettable, and it also set the trap of being remembered for the wrong reason. Born Stephen Henderson Talbot on February 28, 1949, in Los Angeles, California, he grew up as the son of actor Lyle Talbot, where performance was never just a hobby. He worked constantly as a child, appearing on shows like The Twilight Zone and Perry Mason, then returned again and again as Gilbert across dozens of Beaver episodes. The schedule was intense and the identity became sticky. Even as he matured, the world kept pulling him back toward the same boyhood shadow. By the time he reached college, he wanted something sharper. He wanted truth. He married Pippa Gordon, and together they built a stable home life away from celebrity noise, raising children while he reshaped his identity. The marriage became the quiet backbone behind a risky decision, walking away from acting to pursue journalism, a field with less glamour and more conflict. Instead of chasing roles, he chased stories. He became a major documentary voice for PBS, working for years with Frontline and producing investigations that cut into politics and power. His film The Best Campaign Money Can Buy became one of his signature achievements and earned major honors, including Emmy recognition, placing him in rooms where truth mattered more than charm. Today, Stephen Talbot is 77 years old, working as a journalist and documentary filmmaker, his career anchored in long-form investigations rather than nostalgia. His estimated net worth is around $2 million, built through decades of producing, directing, and writing, not through child star riches. Richard Deacon as Fred Rutherford. Fred Rutherford, the stiff, status-obsessed father of Lumpy in Leave It to Beaver, was portrayed by Richard Deacon. At 36 years old, he was the suburban authority figure who smiled politely while radiating quiet contempt. However, the shock is that his real life required a different kind of performance. Born Richard Louis Deacon on May 14, 1921, in Philadelphia, he grew up in a conservative environment that demanded obedience and silence, and he carried that pressure into adulthood while Hollywood quietly punished difference. He built a career out of precision. The prissy producer Mel Cooley on The Dick Van Dyke Show became another signature mask, while films like Invasion of the Body Snatchers and Hitchcock's The Birds placed him inside American pop culture history. Yet the more recognizable he became, the narrower the roles got. Marriage never became his public storyline, and that absence became part of the tension around him in an era that demanded normal at any cost. Instead, he poured intimacy into other places, work, food, and hidden generosity that only surfaced when he was gone. He wrote cookbooks, hosted a Canadian microwave cooking series, and became known among colleagues as a gourmet chef, a private identity warmer than the characters he played. His body failed suddenly, not slowly. Years of strain, secrecy, and relentless work ended with an apparent heart attack on August 8, 1984, in Los Angeles, cutting him down at 63 when he was still booked and still useful to the industry. He was cremated, and his ashes were scattered at sea. His estimated net worth was about $1 million, modest for a face that appeared everywhere. Sue Randall as Miss Alice Landers. Miss Alice Landers, Beaver Cleaver's gentle elementary school teacher in Leave It to Beaver, was portrayed by Sue Randall. At 23 years old, she was the soft voice in the classroom who tried to steer children away from humiliation and panic. The twist is how quickly that calm was stolen from her real life. Born Marion Burnside Randall on October 8, 1935 in Philadelphia, she started acting young and trained seriously, graduating with honors from the American Academy of Dramatic Arts. She worked steadily in television, threading through the era's biggest shows, including The Twilight Zone and westerns like The Rifleman, while also appearing in the film Desk Set with Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn. Her marriages were real and complicated, not glamorous. She married Peter Blake Powell in 1957 and had 2 children, and later married James J. McSparran, who was her husband at the time of her death. While the public remembered her as a patient teacher, her private years were filled with responsibility and the pressure of rebuilding life away from cameras. By 1967, she retired from acting, returned to Philadelphia, and devoted herself to charitable organizations, raising money for major illnesses and for children who had less than she did. Then illness came for her with brutality. She developed lung cancer and laryngeal cancer, tied to years of smoking, and the disease attacked the very instrument that made her famous, her voice. Finally, she died on October 26, 1984, at age 49, from lung and laryngeal cancer in Philadelphia. Her estimated net worth was about $500,000, reflecting a career built on guest roles rather than long-term contracts and massive residuals. Stanley Fafara as Hubert Whitey Whitney. Hubert Whitey Whitney, the loyal, wide-eyed friend of Beaver in Leave It to Beaver, was played by Stanley Fafara. At 8 years old, he was the soft-spoken classmate who stood beside Beaver in quiet mischief. His small frame and gentle delivery made him one of the most innocent faces on the show. What followed after the laughter stopped is almost unbearable to process. Born Stanley Albert Fafara on September 20, 1949 in San Francisco, California, he worked steadily through childhood, including a role in The Wonderful World of the Brothers Grimm. For 6 seasons, he lived inside a safe suburban world on screen, while off-screen adolescence hit harder than anyone expected. After the show ended, he drifted toward older crowds, befriended musicians, and alcohol became a gateway. By his early 20s, drugs were no longer an experiment, but a dependency that swallowed opportunity and erased momentum. His brief marriage ended in divorce, and fatherhood did not anchor him the way it might have. Instead, arrests replaced auditions. In the 1980s, he broke into pharmacies repeatedly to feed a heroin addiction, was sentenced to jail after multiple convictions, and returned to the streets still fighting the same hunger. Heroin left permanent scars. He contracted hepatitis C, cycled through rehabilitation centers, and eventually achieved sobriety in 1995. For 8 final years, he lived clean in Portland, Oregon, first in recovery housing, and later in a small, subsidized apartment, surviving on $475 a month in Social Security. Then came a hernia surgery in 2003. Complications followed quickly, and his weakened body could not recover. Stanley Fafara died on September 20, 2003, his 54th birthday, in Portland, Oregon, from complications related to surgery, worsened by years of addiction and illness. He was buried at Redland Pioneer Cemetery in Oregon. His estimated net worth was about $100,000, a heartbreaking figure for a face once broadcast nationwide. Diane Brewster as Miss Canfield. Miss Canfield, Beaver's first poised, disciplined teacher in Leave It to Beaver, was portrayed by Diane Brewster. At 26 years old, she was the firm but elegant classroom authority who set the tone before the series found its rhythm. Yet her career, like her character, would not remain long in that familiar room. Born on March 11, 1931, in Kansas City, Missouri, Diane Brewster grew up in a prominent family, but under the weight of expectation. She moved into television with speed, appearing memorably as the con artist Samantha Crawford on Maverick, and later as Helen Kimball in The Fugitive, roles that showed range far beyond a schoolteacher. She also starred in the adventure series The Islanders, proving she could carry an hour-long drama. Still, despite versatility, the industry rarely granted her leading permanence. She married oral surgeon Jabez Z. Walker and built a family life that gradually outweighed Hollywood ambition. 2 children followed, and her screen appearances slowed as she chose stability over spotlight. The shift was deliberate, not forced, yet it marked a quiet retreat from a career that had once felt promising. By the late 1960s, she stepped away almost entirely, returning only briefly for revival appearances. Her final years were not defined by scandal, but by health decline. Heart problems emerged, and on November 12, 1991, in Studio City, California, she died of heart failure at 60. She left behind her husband and 2 children and an estimated net worth of around $1 million built through steady television work. Nearly 7 decades after Leave It to Beaver, 1957, first aired, the faces that once defined America's perfect suburbia tell very different stories. Some built second careers far from Hollywood lights, some fought private battles that shattered the innocence we remember, and some are no longer here to see 2026. Which transformation shocked you the most? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more powerful then and now stories that reveal what really happened after the cameras stopped rolling.